So how can we make feedback more effective and useful? Feedback is all about change. We want feedback to lead to change. Nothing changes. The feedback is either not being effective or it hasn't been very, very good. You want people to change for the better interpersonal relationships, better ways to handle tasks, better communication, up way, sideways, down. Feedback is not just one way. It's every way. If change occurs from feedback, you will start to get more and more and more momentum. This is the objective of feedback. So focus your feedback on change. You really need to do this because you want to reduce all the other noise that surrounds a feedback conversation, or the emotion, or the anxiety, or the fear, or the potential self-doubt. All those things get in the way of a feedback conversation. And I use the word conversation explicitly here. Feedback is not a one-way communication. It's a two-way. It's a sounding out. It's a comparing notes. It's a commonality of solution. We've touched on this before. Make feedback frequent. By making it frequent, it reduces the shock value. It becomes less confronting. It's just part of what you all do. Small pieces of feedback on a regular basis. If it's a big piece, a complicated piece, then you might need to do it in a more structured way. But if you have a constant feedback loop, it's easier, more effective, and much, much, much less challenging and daunting for people to engage in it. Be very careful that the one-off feedback contains a year of constructive criticism. That very rarely goes down well. By making it frequent, you also reduce the power dynamic in feedback. It engenders trust. It engenders people understanding that you are trying to help, which reduces the fear of the power hierarchy. You're not telling someone what to do. You're having a conversation about how things can be done better. By making it frequent, it's timely and can have contextual relevance. Planning feedback. The more structured the feedback is, the more important the feedback is, the more you need to plan it. So the first sort of question to look at is the feedback incidental? Is it ad hoc? Is it contextual? Is it sort of happening right in the moment? Obviously, if that's the case, there's less planning involved. However, with scheduled feedback, planning is essential. Make sure you have enough time to plan it, but also make sure you have enough time in the meeting to actually discuss fully the issue you want to bring up and allow time for the other person to have a discussion as well. If it's a big issue, you'll plan it differently. You'll set the stage differently. If it's a one-off, more casual, more incidental. But if it's a repeat occurrence, in other words, you've talked about behavior and it keeps happening, again, different style of meeting needed. Location and environment of meetings are really important. There's a big difference between having a meeting in, say, your office, having your meeting in a cafe, having your meeting over lunch, giving feedback on a walk. Very different. Make sure you match the location and environment with the context and the importance of the feedback. Formality, informality, very important. Public feedback, I would suggest, should only be positive. If you have constructive feedback where you'd like people to change, I would do that in private. If it's an important meeting where you want to give some feedback that may have emotional issues involved in it and may take people a little bit by surprise, then I would strongly suggest you role play and practice before the meeting. Be very careful, and we'll touch this a bit later on your body language. Are you open? Are you responsive? Are you enthusiastic? Have you got energy at the right moments? Very, very important that this planning is for important bits of feedback is done. And also think about again the stage, the environment in which you give it. All these things can make feedback a lot easier because communication is not just about the actual message, the verbal message, it's about the body language and everything else around it. Make sure you're connected. If you have quality relationships in the workplace, and if you are giving feedback in what I would call a quality relationship, it's much more effective. People know you, they trust you. You know them, you trust them, you can read them, they can read you. In a quality relationship, they will know you are trying to help. In a quality relationship, you tend to get less defensive behaviors. So the first step is look for connections and try and build connections with your people because that environment actually helps you when you're giving and receiving feedback. Feedback can be, I would suggest, always is emotionally charged. People have anxiety. Respect this. Consider the other person's feelings. Don't rush into the feedback. As soon as you sit down, say, oh, I've got a few things to tell you. No. Look for a way to ease into the conversation. Look for a way to establish rapport. Keep the feedback about the issue or the behavior. It's not about the person. Remember, you're looking for change. You're looking to make change. Always share your observations from your point of view, not from someone else's, from what you saw, you heard, you felt. Because then you can have a legitimate conversation because it's based on your impressions. I've touched on this before. When you start layering power into a feedback loop, it starts to become really hard. So you need to be curious and you need to have humility. You need to have good intent. You need to make sure people can understand you are trying to help. Power is difficult when you're giving feedback. Again, picking up the point about a quality relationship, picking up the point about when someone's intentions are good, it all adds to helping reduce the noise around the feedback. We excel only when people who know us and care about us tell us what they experience and what they feel, and in particular when they see something within us that really works. How powerful is that? That is what we are striving to do with feedback. And also, in that sort of relationship, you can help people and guide people towards how they can work better. So connectivity, trust, strong relationship makes feedback that much easier to give. When you're giving the feedback, be very awake to what's going on. You want to avoid that fight or flight response. You want to avoid the shutting down. You want to avoid the emotional response. You want to avoid potentially people dismissing the feedback or not accepting the feedback. But you've also got to monitor yourself. You need to be caring. You need to have empathy. You need to be open. You need to be not thinking about yourself. Monitor yourself as well as the recipient. And be very alive to the fact that most communication is nonverbal. How are you pitching it? What's your body language? Are you going quickly? Are you going slowly? Are you pausing? Are you monitoring that the message has been received? Are you checking in? Are the people or the person you're talking to, are they getting emotional? Are you seeing them starting to get angry, upset? If people in a feedback session start to get emotional, you need to acknowledge that. Give them time. Give them space. One question that could work is, what can I do right now that would be most helpful? And they might say, hey, Jonathan, just give me a bit of time. I need to process that. Fantastic. Give them the time. Are they hearing you? If you get the sense someone isn't hearing you, the message isn't seeking in, think about how you can rephrase the message. A phrase such as, this is important, and I want to make sure I'm being as clear as possible. That should get someone's attention. Work through the example again. Wait, watch, listen. Very important. The monitoring is very, very important. Equally important is never forget the motivation of feedback is to improve the situation, is to make the change, is to get buy-in to the change, is to focus on the change that will lead to improvement. It's not about you. And it's funny enough, it's not about them. It's about the change. Make sure the feedback is clear and unambiguous. It can't be misinterpreted. It's fact-based. It's not based on opinions. This is what I saw. It's always from your perspective. Avoid labeling the recipient. Agree specific actions. Follow them up. There's a huge difference between, I think that's wrong, to you are wrong. Don't personalize it. Praise is good. Make sure you reward and recognize good behavior. Praise builds relationships with people. It identifies their strengths and the group's strengths, and it shows teams what success looks like. There is a balance with praise, though. You don't want to be in a culture that praise is given out easily, because then when constructive feedback comes in, it can jar. So praise should be used, absolutely, but used carefully. A bit like sugar in a drink. You don't want too much of it, because a culture that has too much praise finds it very, very hard to make hard decisions. You don't want feedback and praise to lose its impact. People remember how they feel, how you made them feel. They might remember exactly what you said, but they'll remember how you said it and how that made them feel. If you give thoughtful, quality, and constructive feedback, it will lead to real positive change. That's why it's got to be given with clarity, clear, unambiguous, fact-based, but with empathy, caring, wanting them to help, wanting to see improvement, helping them get there. If you focus on those things, feedback can be extraordinarily powerful.